The silence before the story, the night is quiet. The world, for a brief moment, has set down its noise. The crickets hum softly in the distance, a rhythm older than memory. The stars hang like patient witnesses, their light drifting through centuries before touching our eyes. And in this stillness, a story begins. Every human life begins with silence. Before the first cry, there is a pause. Before the first word, there is an emptiness waiting to be filled. And before the first journey, there is uncertainty, the trembling awareness that we have been born into a world we did not choose, carrying questions we do not yet understand. It is in this silence that the Buddha's journey began. And it is in this silence that all our stories, too, take root. The cry of the first breath. Imagine the child, Siddhartha, born in Lumbini, beneath the rustling branches of sal trees. The air was heavy with fragrance. The world itself seemed to pause. Yet, as with all of us, his first introduction to life was not serenity but a cry, a declaration of fragility, a reminder that to live is, first and foremost, to feel. Every newborn cry carries both desperation and hope. It is the sound of needing comfort, of acknowledging pain, of confessing that we cannot survive alone. And in that way, every human cry is the same, whether it comes from the mouth of a prince, a peasant, or a prophet-to-be. The Buddha's first cry was the echo of humanity's first cry. Yours, mine, all of us. Bound together by the same fragile beginning. Loneliness, as the first teacher there, is a truth we often resist. Loneliness arrives long before wisdom. Think of the nights of your childhood, the shadows on the wall, the vastness of the dark, the realization that even surrounded by family, you are still alone in your own thoughts. This was not different for Siddhartha. Though raised in a palace of gold, clothed in silks, and shielded from suffering, he still carried that quiet ache, the longing to belong to something larger than himself, the yearning to understand what could never be given by comfort alone. The loneliness of existence is not a curse. It is the invitation. It tells us you are more than your surroundings. Seek, wander, question, and so, from the earliest breath of life, the emotional journey of humanity begins not with triumph, but with solitude, the universality of pain. Close your eyes, dear listener, and remember, you are not alone in your struggles. Every face you pass hides its own reservoir of sorrow. Every smile has weathered storms. Every wise word you hear is rooted in tears once shed. The philosophers of old knew this well. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who carried the empire upon his shoulders, confessed in his meditations that life was full of grief, betrayal, and the relentless weight of mortality. He was the ruler of the known world, yet he too bent beneath the same burdens you carry. Socrates, whose questions lit the fire of Western philosophy, stood before his accusers not as a triumphant sage, but as a man condemned, aware of the limits of human understanding. And the Buddha himself, sheltered though he was, could not escape the trembling truth that pain is not the exception, but the rule. To be human is to know sorrow, and to know sorrow is the first step toward wisdom. Letters written in darkness. History is filled with documents written not in triumph, but in despair. Think of Abraham Lincoln, long before he became the face of perseverance and freedom, writing in a letter, "I am now the most miserable man living. Whether I shall ever be better, I cannot tell. I awfully forebode I shall not." Or the poet Rainer Maria Rilke, confessing in his letters the unbearable solitude that pressed against his chest. and yet transforming that solitude into beauty. Love your solitude and bear with sweet-sounding lamentation the suffering it causes. These are not the words of people who had everything figured out. They are the words of those who walked first through the shadows. It is here, in these fragile beginnings, that our great human story takes root. The Buddha's first glimpse of Siddhartha. Palace walls could not protect Siddhartha forever. One day, riding in his chariot, he saw for the first time an old man, bent and trembling. Another day, a sick man, writhing in pain. And then, a lifeless body, shrouded in silence. These were not distant concepts. They were mirrors. He saw in them the truth of his own fate, the fate of his loved ones, the fate of every human soul. And with this, despair entered his heart. Not despair in the shallow sense, but despair in its truest form, the realization that life itself is fragile, fleeting, bound to suffering. But here lies the paradox. From this despair came the seed of compassion. The weight we all carry, every person you meet is carrying a weight you cannot see. Some bear it quietly, like hidden stones in their pockets. Others stumble openly beneath its heaviness. The Buddha named this weight dukkha, suffering, dissatisfaction, the ache of existence. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is the small ache of longing, the hunger for meaning, the restlessness that no success or possession can soothe. We are taught to run from suffering, to distract ourselves, to bury it beneath noise. But what if suffering is not the enemy? What if it is the first teacher, guiding us toward the path we were meant to walk? The descent into doubt here begins. The descent, the necessary breaking apart of illusions. Imagine yourself at the edge of a vast sea, the horizon stretching endlessly, and realizing that you do not know where you came from, nor where you are going. That is the condition of being human. Siddhartha felt this. So did Nietzsche, who wrote that when one looks deeply into the abyss looks back. So did Kierkegaard, who trembled before the leap of faith. We all tremble here. We all stand at the edge of doubt. And it is in this trembling that the story begins to truly move. A gentle voice in the night, but let this be a comfort. Every cry has an echo. Every doubt has a response. Every darkness has its dawn. The Buddha's story does not remain in despair, nor do the letters of Lincoln, nor the meditations of Aurelius, nor the cries of the poets. From the soil of suffering, the first shoots of wisdom grow. For now, we rest in this beginning, fragile, uncertain, but alive with possibility. The mirror of mortality life begins fragile. We arrive small, defenseless, dependent on the kindness of others. And no matter how much strength we gather, how much wealth we accumulate, how many walls we build, fragility follows us like a shadow. The Buddha, upon seeing age, sickness, and death for the first time, felt this truth like a wound opening. The illusions of permanence shattered before him. What good were silks, palaces, and music when the body itself was destined to wither? What good was pleasure when sickness could strip it away in an instant? He saw not just the fragility of others, but his own. His father could not protect him. His lineage could not protect him. Even his own body could not protect him. And in that moment, Siddhartha joined the rest of us, vulnerable, uncertain, mortal, a world without guarantees. We often live as though tomorrow is promised. We make plans, draw maps, set goals, but the truth is harsher, and also more profound. There are no guarantees. A letter from the Stoic philosopher Seneca captures this truth. Writing to his friend Lucilius, he said, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." Seneca was not urging despair. He was urging honesty. To admit that existence is fragile is to admit that every moment matters. Each breath, each sunrise, each act of kindness is infinitely precious because none of it is certain to return. This is why mortality, though heavy, awakens us. It calls us to attention. It reminds us not to waste what little time we have. The clay vessel in ancient India. There was a saying, "The body is like a clay pot." At first, it seems solid, useful, dependable. But drop it once, and it shatters. No matter how carefully you protect it, cracks will eventually form. The Buddha used this image often. He taught that clinging to the body as though it were unbreakable was the root of much suffering. Instead, he invited his followers to treat life like a fragile vessel, to use it with care, gratitude, and awareness that it will not last forever. Think of your own body. The hands that once held childhood toys now bear lines of age. The heart that once raced with innocence now carries memories of grief. This is not a tragedy, but a testimony. Fragility is not weakness, it is proof of life lived. The fragility of empires, even the greatest powers, cannot escape impermanence. Consider the Roman Empire. Its legions marched across continents, its roads stitched nations together, its rulers were worshipped as gods. And yet, today it exists only in ruins, in history books, in fading echoes. Or think of the Ming dynasty in China, with its vast armies and endless treasures, glorious, enduring until it wasn't. Fragility is not just personal, it is collective. Civilizations rise, shine, and fall, just as surely as a leaf blooms in spring and withers in autumn. The Buddha's insight was radical because he applied this law universally. Nothing escapes impermanence, not kings, not empires, not even worlds. The humans search for guarantees, but we resist. We build monuments, write books, carve names into stone, all to say, "I was here. I mattered. Do not let me be forgotten." The pyramids of Egypt, the towering cathedrals of Europe, the skyscrapers of our modern cities, all are testaments to humanity's desperate longing for permanence. And yet, even the pyramids crumble. Even the tallest towers lean. Even the strongest names fade with time. This is not cause for despair, but for humility. What if our task is not to escape fragility, but to embrace it? The Buddha and the dying swan. One story tells of Siddhartha as a young boy, walking in the palace gardens when a wounded swan fell from the sky, pierced by an arrow. The bird trembled in his hands, fragile and afraid. Siddhartha felt its pulse, faint and fleeting. His cousin claimed the swan as his prize, arguing that the one who shot it owned it. But Siddhartha disagreed. "Life," he said, "belongs to the one who tries to save it." This story is not just about compassion. It is about fragility. Siddhartha's hands trembled as he held the dying swan. In that trembling, he understood the preciousness of every breath. The letters of the fragile history gives us voices that echo this truth. Listen to the words of Anne Frank, a young girl hiding in a secret annex during the terror of war. How wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Her words, written in fragility, carry more power than the speeches of generals. Why? Because they emerged from the edge of existence, where every moment could be the last dot. Or think of Viktor Frankl, the psychologist who endured Auschwitz. In the camp, stripped of freedom, stripped of family, he discovered one thing remained: the power to choose his attitude. From this fragility came his immortal book, Man's Search for Meaning. These voices remind us that fragility is not an end, but a beginning, a universe of change. The Buddha described existence as a flame. It flickers, it changes, it dances in the wind, never the same from one moment to the next. Modern science echoes this. Every cell in your body is constantly changing. The atoms that make you were once parts of stars. Even the ground beneath your feet is shifting, continents drifting on molten seas. Fragility is not an exception. It is the very fabric of existence. To resist it is to resist reality itself. Embracing the fragile soul, what, then, is the path? To despair at fragility, to numb ourselves with distractions. The Buddha offered another way: to embrace it, to treat each breath as a gift, each connection as sacred, each day as unrepeatable. Imagine drinking tea, knowing the cup may break. You savor it more deeply. Imagine speaking to a loved one, knowing time is short. You listen more fully. Fragility deepens love. When Siddhartha left his palace, it was not because he despised life. It was because he loved it too much to ignore its truth. The gentle realization, and so, dear listener, let us end this section gently. The fragility of existence is not a curse. It is the reminder that life is precious, that love matters, that compassion cannot wait. The Buddha's journey teaches us not to fear fragility, but to let it open our eyes, so that when the wind blows and the flame flickers, we will not waste the light we are given. The unavoidable burden suffering is the shadow that walks with us from birth. We try to deny it. We try to escape it. We try to bury it beneath laughter, wealth, or distraction. Yet it always returns. The Buddha did not turn away from this truth. He named it. He placed it at the center of his teaching. Dukkha, suffering, dissatisfaction, the ache of life. This was not pessimism. It was honesty. To live is to hurt. To love is to risk loss. To hope is to face disappointment. And yet, from this weight, something extraordinary is forged. The Buddha's night of awakening is said that on the night of his enlightenment, as Siddhartha sat beneath the Bodhi tree, the weight of suffering pressed upon him with unbearable force. He remembered every face of sorrow he had seen, the sick, the dying, the grieving. He felt, as if within his own body, the suffering of all living beings, not just humans, but animals, birds, insects, all caught in the same cycle of birth and death. The weight was crushing, but he did not flee. He sat, he breathed. He allowed the weight to press upon him until it broke into understanding. Suffering is universal, but it is not final. The forge of the soul suffering is not only a burden, it is a forge. It shapes us, tempers us, transforms us. Think of Helen Keller, born both blind and deaf, living in a world of silence and darkness. Her early life was despair. Yet, with the guidance of her teacher, Anne Sullivan, she broke through isolation and became a voice of hope, an author, an activist, an inspiration for millions. Her suffering was not erased, it was transformed into wisdom. Think of Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison. Each year was a weight upon his soul. Yet, when he emerged, he did not carry vengeance. He carried forgiveness. His suffering had carved him into a man capable of leading a fractured nation toward healing. The weight of suffering is terrible, but in its heaviness, it carries the potential for greatness. Letters from the Depths suffering has always given birth to words that outlive their authors. In the 18th century, the poet William Blake wrote, "Joy and woe are woven fine, a clothing for the soul divine." He understood that suffering and joy are not enemies, but companions, each giving the other meaning. From the dungeons of Birmingham jail, Martin Luther King Jr. wrote words that shook the conscience of the world. His suffering, the chains on his hands, the bars before his eyes, did not silence him. Instead, it gave his words a power that comfort could never have produced. This is the strange alchemy of suffering. It breaks us. Yet from the brokenness comes truth. The Buddha and the broken bowl one day. A monk accidentally dropped and shattered his begging bowl. Distraught, he came to the Buddha and asked how he could bear such loss. The Buddha gently replied, "All things break." The bowl was already broken. It simply awaited its time. So too is it with our bodies, our possessions, even our relationships. Knowing this truth, hold them with love, but without clinging. The monk wept, but his heart was lighter. The story is simple, yet profound. Suffering comes not only from pain itself, but from the refusal to accept impermanence. Suffering as a teacher, in the stillness of suffering, lessons whisper. When you grieve, you learn the depth of your love. When you fail, you discover humility. When you are betrayed, you find discernment. When you are alone, you encounter yourself. The Buddha called this the noble truth. Suffering teaches us. It strips away illusions, forcing us to confront reality. Without suffering, there would be no compassion. Without loss, there would be no gratitude. Without the weight pressing us down, there would be no reason to rise. The shared burden, we often imagine suffering as a solitary weight. But the truth is, we carry it together. During World War II, when bombs fell on London, families gathered in underground shelters. Strangers held hands in the dark, singing songs to drown the fear. The suffering did not vanish, but in sharing it, they discovered strength. Likewise, in the wake of disasters, communities rise. People give blood, food, shelter. In suffering, humanity rediscovers its unity. The Buddha taught compassion not as a moral duty, but as a survival strategy. When suffering is shared, it is lighter. The shadow and the flame, imagine suffering as a shadow. It follows you, inseparable. But what is a shadow without light? The Buddha realized that suffering is not an error in existence. It is the contrast that reveals the beauty of peace, the silence that makes joy audible, the darkness that makes light visible. This does not mean suffering is good. It means suffering is real, and in facing it, we uncover the truth of life itself, the gentle acceptance. So, dear listener, what should we do with the weight of suffering? Should we curse it? Should we run from it? Should we pretend it does not exist? The Buddha offers another way. Accept it, not with despair, but with gentleness. Hold your suffering the way you would hold a wounded bird, carefully, tenderly, knowing it too is part of your journey. When you do, something begins to change. The weight is still there, but it no longer crushes you. It shapes you. It carries you forward. Closing of the chapter. The weight of suffering is heavy. It bends us. It scars us. But it also teaches us, binds us, and prepares us for the next step. This is not the end of the story. It is the middle of the night where sorrow reigns. Yet, even here, the seeds of resilience stir. For in the chapters ahead, suffering will transform into something unexpected, into strength, into courage, into the fire that lights the way. The restless heart, every soul, no matter how bound, carries within it a whisper. I was born to be free. This whisper is ancient. It is the voice of the prisoner staring at the bars. It is the sigh of the laborer bent beneath the weight of chains. It is the cry of the human spirit when faced with oppression. The Buddha felt it in his own way, not as a political prisoner, but as a man imprisoned by comfort. The palace was his cage. The luxury was his chain. His father sought to shield him from pain, but in doing so, he kept him from truth. The Buddha's cry for freedom was not from a tyrant, but from illusion. He walked away from the palace gates, leaving behind wealth, family, and title, all to seek a freedom deeper than power. Freedom from suffering itself. But across history, others have cried for freedom in different tones, in different places, and with stakes that shook nations. The chains of the oppressed picture the slave ships crossing the Atlantic, filled with bodies pressed so tightly together they could not move. The air was heavy with salt, sweat, and sorrow. In the midst of such cruelty, songs rose, songs of longing, songs of hope, songs that whispered of freedom. These were not mere melodies. They were survival. They were the soul's refusal to be broken. The cry for freedom has always risen where oppression tried to silence it. The Buddha and the bird in the cage there is a parable of a bird kept in a golden cage. The cage was polished daily, jewels adorned its bars, and food was brought in abundance. Yet the bird did not sing. One day, the Buddha was asked why. He smiled and said, "Because the bird does not long for gold. It longs for the open sky. So it is with human beings. You can surround us with comfort, but without freedom. The soul withers. Voices across time history's greatest documents are often cries for freedom." Thomas Jefferson, pen in hand, wrote into the Declaration of Independence the immortal words, "We hold these truths to be so, that all men are created equal." Though written in a world still bound by slavery, it lit a flame that could not be extinguished. Centuries later, in a jail cell in Birmingham, Martin Luther King, Jr. wrote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." His cry for freedom was not shouted in rage, but written in patience, in clarity, in hope, and far across the world, in India. Mahatma Gandhi lifted his voice not with swords, but with silence, fasting, and marches. His cry for freedom shook an empire. The inner and outer battle freedom is twofold. There is the outer freedom, the right to speak, to move, to live without chains. And there is the inner freedom, the release from fear, anger, and desire. The Buddha's journey was a cry for inner freedom. Gandhi's was a cry for outer freedom. Yet both are intertwined. For without inner freedom, outer freedom becomes corrupted. And without outer freedom, inner peace is constantly tested to live fully. We must seek both. Mandela's cry in 1964, standing trial in South Africa. Nelson Mandela declared, "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." The weight of his words was not metaphorical. He knew prison awaited him. He knew death was possible. Yet, his cry for freedom was so powerful, so unwavering, that even decades in a cell could not silence it. His story reminds us that freedom is not given. It is taken, held, fought for, not always with violence, but always with courage. The cry of the poet's not all cries for freedom are political. Some are personal. Some are whispered in poems. Pablo Neruda, the Chilean poet, once wrote of the need to free the human spirit from silence. You can cut all the flowers, but you cannot keep spring from coming. The poet Rumi, centuries before, spoke of another kind of freedom. Why do you stay in prison when the door is so wide open? These poets remind us that freedom is not only from tyranny, but from the prisons we build within ourselves, prisons of fear, doubt, and self-denial. The Buddha and the cry of the beggar one evening. The Buddha walked past a beggar crying in the street. His disciples asked, "Why does he suffer so deeply?" The Buddha replied, "Because he believes freedom is in wealth. He does not yet see that freedom begins in the mind." This is not to dismiss poverty or injustice, but to reveal a deeper truth. True freedom must reach the heart, or else even kings remain prisoners. The suspense of choice. Every cry for freedom carries a choice. To remain silent or to speak, to submit or to resist, to cling to safety or to risk everything. Think of Rosa Parks, who chose not to stand up from her seat. In that small act of refusal, she ignited a movement. Think of Malala Yousafzai, a young girl who spoke for education and was shot by those who feared her voice. Yet she lived, and her cry for freedom carried her onto the world stage. Freedom demands choices, and those choices echo through history. The gentle echo. And so, dear listener, the cry for freedom is not distant from you. It is within you. It rises when you long for authenticity in a world of masks. It stirs when you seek kindness in a world of cruelty. It whispers when you dream of living true to yourself, unbound by fear. The Buddha's cry, Gandhi's cry, Mandela's cry, they are all echoes of your own. Closing of the chapter. The cry for freedom begins in despair, but it does not end there. It rises, trembles, and refuses to be silenced. It is the bird longing for the sky. It is the prisoner longing for the light. It is the human spirit, fragile yet unbreakable, demanding to be free. And from this cry, sparks will soon fly, sparks that will ignite hope, resilience, and the fire that cannot be put out. The first flickering, the darkest night, even the smallest flame changes everything. Hope does not arrive as thunder or lightning. It comes as a spark, fragile, trembling, but alive. The Buddha found his spark not in a palace, not in wealth, not in power, but in stillness. After nights of despair, after endless hunger and questions that hollowed him, he remembered a childhood moment, sitting beneath a rose-apple tree, watching the wind move gently through the grass and feeling peace. That memory, that spark, guided him back toward balance. It told him the way is not self-indulgence, and it is not self-torture. It is the middle path. From this spark, the journey toward enlightenment began. The spark in history. Every great change begins with such sparks. Think of Rosa Parks, sitting on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, refusing to stand. It was not a roar, not a battle, not a revolution with swords. It was a single quiet act of courage, but from it a movement was lit. Think of the Berlin Wall, standing for decades as a symbol of division, and then a spark. Ordinary people gathering, one brick removed, then another, until the wall crumbled. Hope is always fragile at first. It looks small. It looks powerless. But history teaches us, sparks spread. The Buddha and the lamp. Once, a monk asked the Buddha, "How can hope survive in such a world of suffering?" The Buddha lit a small oil lamp and placed it in the monk's hands. "As this lamp lights another," he said, "and that one lights another, darkness recedes. One spark is enough." The monk carried the lamp into the night, and indeed, its glow was enough to guide his steps. So it is with us, letters of hopesome. Of the most powerful words ever written were written in despair, yet carried sparks of hope. Anne Frank, hiding in fear of death, wrote in her diary, "I don't think of all the misery, but of the beauty that still remains." Abraham Lincoln, weighed by war, told his people, "The better angels of our nature would one day prevail, even in the darkest prisons. Hope has been written into walls, scratched into paper, whispered between the weary. These sparks survive, and in surviving, they guide us. The spark within you, hope, is not only found in grand events or famous lives. It stirs in your own quiet moments. When you wake after a heavy day and still choose to rise. When you smile through tears. When you forgive instead of hardening your heart. Each of these is a spark, unseen perhaps, but powerful." The Buddha said, "Do not underestimate acts of goodness, even small ones. A pot is filled, drop by drop. So too is life filled with hope, spark by spark, the music of hope in the darkest times." Music has often carried the spark. During slavery in America, spirituals were sung, songs of rivers, of deliverance, of freedom yet to come. The songs were fragile, but they kept the soul alive. Beethoven, deaf and broken by life, composed his Ninth Symphony, the Ode to Joy. He could not hear the music, yet he gave the world one of its greatest songs of hope. Music carries sparks because it speaks. Where words fail, the spark of science and discovery hope is not only spiritual or political, it is also scientific, artistic, human. Marie Curie, widowed and weary, continued her experiments alone, discovering radium and polonium, igniting sparks of progress that changed medicine forever. Galileo, silenced by the church, whispered that the earth moves, a spark that later set minds ablaze with truth. Every discovery begins with someone daring to hope that the unknown can be understood. The fragility of the spark, but let us be honest, sparks are fragile. They can be smothered, they can be ignored, they can die out. The Buddha warned that hope without discipline fades. A flame without fuel cannot last. Hope must be tended with compassion, with wisdom, with courage. This is why communities, movements, and friendships matter. Alone, our sparks flicker. Together, they become fire, the gentle lesson. Dear listener, when your night feels long, remember, you do not need the whole sun at once. You only need a spark. The Buddha began with one spark of memory beneath a tree. Mandela began with one spark of conviction in his heart. Every revolution, every awakening, every transformation began with something small. A word, a step, a gesture. Never doubt your spark. Closing of the chapter, the spark of hope is the turning point. It does not erase suffering, but it lights a path through it. From despair, a cry rises. From that cry, a spark flickers. And from that spark, fire will soon grow. The story is far from over. The next step is the fire of resilience, when hope hardens into determination, and the soul learns not only to survive, but to rise. From spark to fire, hope is a beginning, but left alone, it flickers and fades. Resilience is what keeps the spark alive until it becomes a flame. The Buddha knew this. His path was not a single night of inspiration. It was years of practice, discipline, setbacks, and renewal. The tree of enlightenment did not shelter him because of a single spark, but because he stayed, unmoving, through storms of doubt, through the whispers of temptation, through the long silence of his own thoughts. Resilience is staying when leaving feels easier. It is rising again when falling feels final. It is the fire that keeps life moving forward. The story of Mandela. Consider Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison, not days, not weeks, but decades, cut off from the world. The spark of freedom could easily have died in such darkness. Yet, Mandela's fire burned brighter. He taught fellow prisoners, studied law, wrote letters, and refused to let hatred consume him. When he finally emerged, he did not come out broken. He came out blazing with resilience, strong enough to forgive, strong enough to lead. His life shows us, sparks may be given, but fire must be built. Letters from prison. Many of history's deepest lessons of resilience come from prison cells. Martin Luther King Jr., in his letter from Birmingham jail, wrote, "Not with despair, but with dignity, we will reach the goal of freedom." Because the goal of America is freedom. These words, scratched out in confinement, were stronger than bars. Resilience transforms prison into a pulpit. Even the Buddha said, "Just as a solid rock is not shaken by the storm, the wise are not moved by praise or blame." Resilience is being the rock, the fire of mother's resilience is not always seen in speeches or revolutions. Often, it burns quietly in mothers. Think of the mother in war, feeding her children scraps, still singing them to sleep. Think of the mother working 2 jobs, never resting, so her children might rest someday. Resilience wears many faces, but none more powerful than love that refuses to break. In this sense, every mother is a bodhisattva, carrying others through storms on her own back. The Buddha's lesson of the tree. One day, a disciple asked the Buddha how to endure suffering. The Buddha pointed to a tree. "See how it bends with the wind, yet does not break. See how it grows slow, ring by ring, year by year, even when storms rage. That is resilience." The disciple bowed, because resilience is not only fire, but also roots, deep, unseen, unshakable. The fire of Gandhi Mahatma. Gandhi faced prisons, hunger strikes, ridicule, and violence. Yet his fire did not burn as rage. His fire burned as non-violence, a strange, paradoxical flame, but one that consumed an empire's grip on India. Resilience does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers, "I will not move." Gandhi's life tells us, the strongest fires are not always those that destroy, but those that endure. The science of fire within psychologists today call it grit. Scientists study why some people collapse under pressure while others rise. And though words change, the truth remains ancient. Resilience is not talent, not luck, but practice. The Buddha practiced meditation through hunger, temptation, fear. Mandela practiced patience. Lincoln practiced perseverance through loss. The fire grows because it is tended, daily, with discipline. Falling and rising, every resilient life includes falls. The Buddha faced temptation beneath the Bodhi tree, Mara whispering, "Give up, Jesus." Two faced temptation in the desert. Socrates faced trial and death. Resilience is not the absence of falling. It is the art of rising again and again. and again. As the Japanese saying goes, fall 7 times, rise 8. The fire shed one fire alone can warm a room. Many fires together can warm the world. Resilience spreads when we witness it in others. Soldiers in trenches, inspired by a comrade's courage. Children, inspired by a teacher's faith. Nations, inspired by leaders who do not bend. Even you, listener, carry fire. Someone is watching you, quietly, finding strength because you have not given up. Closing of the chapter. So we see, sparks give us beginnings, but fire gives us strength. The Buddha endured until wisdom bloomed. Mandela endured until freedom came. Mothers endure until children thrive. Humanity endures, not because life is easy, but because we learn to burn without burning out. Resilience is fire. Fire is life, and when fire spreads, something greater awakens, the call to greatness itself. The whisper of destiny greatness rarely arrives with trumpets. It begins as a whisper. There is more to do, more to give, more to become. The Buddha, having found balance beneath the Bodhi tree, could have remained silent, content in his enlightenment. But the call was clear. Share the path, so others may awaken. This is the call to greatness, the moment when personal peace becomes a gift for the world. Socrates and the call Socrates could have lived quietly, teaching a few students, avoiding controversy. Instead, he followed the call to question everything. He asked the city of Athens to examine itself, to live not just with wealth and glory, but with truth. The call led him to trial, to condemnation, to a cup of hemlock. Yet his greatness is eternal, because he answered as he said. The unexamined life is not worth living. Greatness begins with such courage. The courage to listen to the call. Lincoln's burden. Abraham Lincoln was not born to power. He rose from poverty, teaching himself by firelight. But the call came when the nation fractured. Others might have sought compromise, escape, safety. Lincoln chose the harder road, to hold a nation together. His words, "A house divided against itself cannot stand," were not just politics. They were destiny. The greatness of Lincoln was not in never doubting. He doubted deeply, but he answered the call anyway. The call in letters' histories, calls to greatness, are often preserved in letters. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail was a call to America. Gandhi's letters to the British Crown were a call to conscience. Even in quiet handwriting, greatness speaks. It asks, will you live for yourself alone, or for something larger? The Buddha's first sermon, the Buddha answered his call with words. At Sarnath, he gave his first sermon, the Four Noble Truths, the Middle Way. It was not a speech of conquest or command. It was a gentle map for humanity. And yet, that simple sermon has guided millions for centuries. Greatness often begins not with armies, but with words that light the mind. The fire of visionaries. Visionaries are those who see beyond the present into what could be. Marie Curie saw cures where others saw stones. Einstein saw the universe bending where others saw only stars. Steve Jobs saw art in machines. The call to greatness is not always political or spiritual. Sometimes it is scientific, artistic, visionary. But always, it demands sacrifice. The risk of refusal. Many hear the call and turn away. The Buddha spoke of this. Few are those who see the path. Few are those who walk it. History is full of leaders who chose comfort over truth, power over justice. Their names fade. Greatness demands risk. The risk of failure, exile, even death. That is why it is rare, and why it is precious. The quiet greatness, but greatness is not only in names carved on monuments. It is in the teacher who believes in a child no one else sees. It is in the healer who tends to the sick when others flee. Greatness answers the call, whether or not the world applauds. The Buddha said, if you light a lamp for someone, it will also brighten your path. That lamp, lit quietly, is greatness the call to Dayond? What of us? We too hear calls, perhaps not to rule nations or found religions, but to live with courage, compassion, truth, to be honest when lying is easier, to be kind when cruelty is safer, to keep hope alive in someone else. These are calls to greatness, as real as any throne or battlefield. Closing of the chapter. The call to greatness is not about glory. It is about service. The Buddha, Socrates, Lincoln, King, Curie, all gave themselves to something larger, answering with fire, courage, and sacrifice. Now, the story shifts. For when greatness is embraced by many, it becomes more than the power of individuals. It becomes the rising power of the human spirit itself. The rising tide. An individual spark can light a fire, but when sparks join, the night is no match for the dawn. This is the power of the human spirit, not isolated, but collective. The Buddha's awakening could have remained a private joy, a single man's freedom from suffering. Instead, it became a sangha, a community. Together, monks and lay people carried his teaching across mountains and centuries. The human spirit multiplies when shared. Marches that shook the world. Think of the Selma March in 1965. Hundreds walked, beaten, bloodied, yet unbroken. The human spirit was stronger than clubs and chains. Their footsteps echoed until the world heard. Think of the Salt March in 1930. Gandhi walked to 40 miles to the sea, gathering thousands along the way. What began as one man became a movement, an ocean of people dissolving the grip of empire. When the human spirit rises together, empires tremble. The great walls that fell, history built walls, of stone, of law, of prejudice, but none stood forever. The Berlin Wall fell not because of tanks, but because people gathered, singing, shouting, refusing to remain divided. The apartheid regime collapsed not by accident, but because voices across the world joined the voices of South Africans, declaring, no more. The human spirit is stronger than walls. Stories of shared struggle during World War II. The people of London endured bombings night after night. Buildings fell, fires raged, yet each morning, neighbors shared tea, rebuilt homes, and lived on in Japan after earthquakes and tsunamis. Communities rose from rubble, hand in hand, showing that grief shared becomes strength multiplied. This is resilience at scale. This is the human spirit unbroken. The Buddha and the Sangha. Buddha himself knew this truth. The path is walked more easily in community. That is why he established the Sangha, not only monks, but ordinary people, all bound by compassion, discipline, and truth, he said. Admirable friendship is the whole of the spiritual life, for even enlightenment blooms brighter when shared. The human spirit finds power in friendship, in unity, in togetherness. Voices in song movements often rise on music. The spirituals of enslaved people in America carried both grief and defiance. Nkosi Sikelel, Africa, became a hymn of freedom across Africa. Do you hear the people sing? still echoes as a cry for justice in protests. Worldwide songs remind us that the human spirit is not broken by chains, it sings through them. The science of togetherness modern studies show that when people sing, march, or even breathe together, their heartbeats synchronize. It is as if the human spirit literally unites in rhythm. This is why armies march, why choirs move us, why protests swell with energy. The spirit in one body resonates with another, until 1,000 bodies move as one. The cost of collective power, but let us not romanticize blindly. The collective human spirit can be twisted. Crowds can be led to hatred as easily as to love. Tyrants have also summoned masses into frenzy. That is why the call to greatness must guide the power of the human spirit. Without wisdom, fire burns. With wisdom, fire warms. The Buddha taught mindfulness for this very reason. Power without awareness destroys. The flame that lasts yet again and again. Humanity proves that compassion survives. Revolutions collapse, wars fade, but the human spirit rebuilds. It rises after plagues, famines, floods. It rises after genocide and grief. It rises because within us all is something that refuses to surrender. The same spirit that bloomed in the Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree. That marched with Gandhi, that sang with King. Closing of the chapter, the power of the human spirit is the heartbeat of history. One voice is fragile, many voices are thunder. One step is lonely, many steps shake the earth. When resilience spreads, when greatness becomes shared, humanity itself awakens. But what happens when this rising spirit reaches the edge? When choices must be made, choices that will shape everything. That is where we now go. The crossroads, every life, every nation, every age, arrives at moments where paths diverge. One choice leads to freedom, another to chains. One choice to compassion, another to cruelty. The Buddha faced such a choice beneath the Bodhi tree. Mara whispered temptations, leave this path. Take comfort. Take power. Yet he chose to remain unmoving until truth revealed itself. Such moments of tension define us. They are the silent hinges of history. Hamlet's question, humanity's question, to be or not to be. Hamlet asked. It was not just a prince's question, but humanity's. Do we continue, though weary, or surrender to despair? Do we fight for justice, or look away? Do we embrace love, or guard ourselves in fear? The tension of choices is universal. It lives in every human heart. The American choice in 1776. A group of men in Philadelphia faced a choice: endure colonial rule or declare independence. Signing the declaration was not symbolic. It was treason. If they lost, they would hang. John Adams wrote, "We must all hang together, or we shall assuredly all hang separately." They chose freedom, and a nation was born. The choice of Gandhi when India burned with rage under colonial rule. Gandhi faced the same tension. Many cried for violence, for blood, for revenge. Gandhi chose differently. Non-violence satyagraha, truth-force. It was not an easy choice. It brought ridicule, beatings, prison. But it turned a movement into a moral revolution. The choice not to strike back changed the world. The Buddha's teaching of 2 arrows. The Buddha once said, when struck by an arrow, we feel pain. But if we then choose anger, hatred, despair, it is as if a second arrow strikes us. The first we could not control. The second we can dot. So much of life is this. Will we let the second arrow fly, or will we choose peace? The Cuban Missile Crisis, October 1962. The world stood on the brink of nuclear war. John F. Kennedy faced a choice: strike, blockade, or negotiate. One wrong move, and humanity could have ended itself. For 13 days, the tension of choice gripped the globe. Finally, restraint and dialogue prevailed. The missiles were withdrawn. History bent toward survival because a handful of men chose carefully. Choices in the shadows. Not all choices are grand. Sometimes the most important ones happen in shadows. A farmer hides a refugee. A doctor refuses to participate in cruelty. A worker speaks truth to a tyrant. These choices may not fill textbooks, but they tilt the moral balance of the world. The choice of silence. Elie Wiesel, survivor of the Holocaust, wrote, "We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence itself is a choice, a dangerous one." The tension of choices is often this: will we speak, or will we stay silent? The weight of responsibility. The Buddha taught that each choice plants a seed. Karma. Seeds of compassion grow into forests of peace. Seeds of hatred into forests of fire. Every choice is heavier than we think, because each ripples outward, touching lives we will never see. Closing of the chapter. The tension of choices is the heartbeat of suspense in the human story. At each crossroad, destiny hangs by a thread. Sometimes we choose courage, sometimes fear. Sometimes we stumble, sometimes we rise. But always, the power rests in the decision. From this tension comes either collapse or transformation. And history shows, before dawn, there is always the edge of collapse. The breaking point. Every journey reaches a breaking point. The Buddha felt it when, after years of starving himself, he nearly died on the banks of the Naranyara River. His body was weak, his spirit fraying. He wondered if enlightenment was beyond him. In that moment, collapse felt certain. Yet collapse, paradoxically, is also the threshold. At the edge of breaking, the soul discovers whether it will shatter or transform. The fall of Rome. History's empires reveal this truth. Rome, vast and mighty, seemed unshakable. Yet corruption, decadence, and division hollowed it from within. When invaders finally came, the empire collapsed like a weakened tree. For centuries, it looked like the world itself was collapsing. Libraries burned, roads crumbled, knowledge scattered. Yet, from the ashes, monasteries preserved wisdom, seeds of renewal hidden in the ruins. The edge of collapse carries both danger and possibility. The betrayal of Jesus at Gethsemane. Jesus felt the sting of betrayal. His closest disciples sold him for silver. His friends fled. His prayers in the garden were filled with anguish. Let this cup pass from me. This was the edge of collapse, when even the Son of Man felt abandoned. Yet through betrayal came sacrifice, and through sacrifice, faith reborn. Collapse can precede resurrection. Lincoln's night of doubt. Abraham Lincoln often walked alone at night, weighed by civil war. In letters, he confessed despair. Casualties rose by the thousands. Advisors doubted him. Assassins stalked him. In 1862, he told a confidant he feared the Union might be lost. This was his edge of collapse. And yet, in that same year, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, turning despair into purpose. The edge did not consume him. It clarified him. The Buddha's Maharaj, the Buddha, sat beneath the Bodhi tree. Mara came, the embodiment of fear, desire, and illusion. Mara tempted him with pleasure, threatened him with armies, whispered doubts into his heart. This was collapse itself, the storm of the mind at its fiercest. But the Buddha touched the earth. He called the ground itself to witness his right to awaken. And in that moment, the storm broke. Collapse transformed into enlightenment. Failure in sequence history of discovery is also filled with collapse. Thomas Edison tried thousands of times to make a light bulb work. Failure after failure, collapse after collapse. Yet each near failure revealed another path. Marie Curie, after years of grief and loss, continued her work when it seemed hopeless. Her resilience turned collapse into breakthroughs that saved lives. Collapse can be the final lesson before triumph. When nations faltered, Germany after World War I collapsed into hunger, humiliation, despair. That collapse became fertile ground for tyranny, birthing another war, another abyss. But Japan, after World War II, also collapsed. Its cities reduced to ashes, yet its people rebuilt with discipline and unity, rising into peace and prosperity. Collapse does not decide destiny. Response does. The personal collapse. Not all collapses are written in history books. Some happen in private. The collapse of a marriage, the collapse of health, the collapse of belief in oneself. And yet, many who have fallen this low speak later of renewal. Addiction overcome, new love found, new life built. The edge of collapse is terrifying, but it is also where rebirth begins. The Buddha's teaching on impermanence. The Buddha taught all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. Collapse, then, is not the end. It is the proof that nothing fixed exists. Even despair passes. Even ruins give way to growth. Closing of the chapter. The edge of collapse is the darkest point of the journey. Betrayal, failure, ruin, all press close. But it is also the moment when the human spirit decides, shall I break or shall I rise? History shows us that collapse is never the final word. From Rome's ashes, Europe rebirthed. From Lincoln's despair, freedom advanced. From the Buddha's temptations, enlightenment bloomed. After the edge comes the turning, the great reversals that change everything. The shift collapse feels final until it doesn't. Just when the storm seems endless, clouds break. Just when armies falter, reinforcements arrive. Just when the heart despairs, strength returns. The Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree did not remain forever under Mara's shadow. Dawn came, silence deepened, and then enlightenment. The tide turned, not with force, but with stillness. This pattern echoes everywhere. The moment when night yields to dawn. Dunkirk, a narrow escape. The British Army, cornered on the beaches of Dunkirk, faced annihilation. Collapse seemed certain. Then a turning. Civilian boats, hundreds of them, crossed the channel, ferrying soldiers to safety. The army survived. The war, once hopeless, gained a chance. The turning of the tide is rarely neat. It comes as desperation transformed into daring, as the ordinary rising to meet the impossible. The Buddha's first followers after awakening. The Buddha walked to some. His old companions at first rejected him, but when they heard him speak of the middle way, their hearts stirred. They became his first disciples. In that moment, the tide turned. The teaching that might have died in silence instead began to ripple outward. From 5 followers came millions. The turning of the tide begins small, but its momentum grows. The Battle of Gettysburg, the American Civil War, hung in the balance. Lee's army pressed northward, confident. At Gettysburg, the Union nearly collapsed. But then, a stand on Little Round Top, a repelled charge at Pickett's line. The tide turned. Not instantly, not cleanly, but decisively. The war's momentum shifted toward freedom. Such turns are forged in blood and courage. Mandela's release for decades. South Africa seemed trapped under apartheid, collapse of justice endless. Then Mandela was released. His walk from prison was not just a man stepping into sunlight, but an entire people stepping toward possibility. The tide turned because years of resilience finally broke the walls of oppression. Letters of turning Winston Churchill. In 1942, told his nation after a victory, "This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is, perhaps, the end of the beginning." The turning of the tide rarely ends struggle. It simply changes the current, offering hope where none was before. The Buddha's teachings on effort. The Buddha said, "With effort, one overcomes suffering. With wisdom, one finds peace. The fool lies idle, the wise strive on." The tide does not turn by chance. It turns by effort, by holding on one moment longer. By rising when falling seems easier. History rewards those who keep rowing, even against the storm, until the current shifts. The reversals in Science. Galileo, condemned for speaking truth, died in disgrace. Yet centuries later, his ideas triumphed. Gregor Mendel, ignored in his lifetime, became the father of genetics long after his death. Van Gogh, painting in poverty, unknown, now brightens museums across the globe. The tide sometimes turns slowly, even after death, but turn it does. The inner tide. Each life knows such turnings. A man addicted to despair finds sobriety after years of collapse. A woman abandoned in grief discovers new strength in solitude. A child bullied and voiceless grows into a leader who inspires millions. The turning of the tide is not just history's story. It is yours. Closing of the chapter. The tide always turns. Slowly, suddenly, painfully, beautifully, but it turns. Collapse is never the end. Night is never permanent. From Dunkirk to Gettysburg, from prison cells to monasteries, from ashes to enlightenment, history is a river that bends, and bends again. And yet, before dawn truly breaks, there is always one last shadow, the moment before dawn, the darkest hour of all. The silence of despair. Every great journey passes through a moment where hope seems buried. The Buddha, beneath the Bodhi tree, felt the last assault of Mara in the deepest night. Visions of fear, desire, doubt, and death. Darkness pressed close, as if it would never lift. And yet, this was the hour before enlightenment. So too, humanity's greatest stories pause in this stillness, where the world seems broken beyond repair. Lincoln's long night, the Civil War raged. Lincoln walked the halls of the White House alone. Newspapers condemned him. Generals failed him. The dead filled fields in letters. He admitted despair. "If there is a worse place than hell, I am in it." This was the moment before dawn. The Emancipation Proclamation, the turning of the war, and the rebirth of the nation lay just ahead. But at the time, all was shadow. Gandhi, in prison India's struggle for freedom, was filled with victories, but also nights of despair. Gandhi, jailed, frail, alone, fasted in silence. The empire seemed unshakable. Violence threatened to tear apart his dream of non-violence. But prison, like night, was not the end. It was the waiting before dawn where resolve crystallized. Letters in the dark. Martin Luther King Jr., jailed in Birmingham, wrote by dim light. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The letter was not triumphant. It was weary, burdened, written in chains, yet it would echo into dawn, stirring the conscience of the world. The Buddha's teaching on darkness, the Buddha said, like the moon, come out from behind the clouds. Shine, the darkest night hides light. The moment before dawn is not defeat. It is the womb of awakening. The Holocaust's silencing, the ghettos and camps. Despair thickened. Yet even there, sparks of humanity endured. Viktor Frankl, in Auschwitz, wrote later that life's final freedom is choice, the power to respond to suffering with meaning. For many, dawn never came. But for those who lived, the lesson became eternal. Despair does not end the story. The artist's Knight Van Gogh painted in poverty, writing letters to his brother Theo about loneliness and failure. He died believing himself forgotten, yet his canvases would one day blaze like stars in galleries. For him, dawn never arrived in life, but it came for his legacy. The moment before dawn can stretch beyond a lifetime. The stillness of waiting in every life. There are hours that feel endless, the illness that lingers. Without cure, the grief that numbs. Without relief, the silence after prayer. Without answer, these are the moments before dawn, the tests of endurance that break. Illusions, but forge strength. Nature's lesson, the darkest hour truly comes before sunrise. Farmers know it. Monks know it. Travelers know it. The earth itself whispers the truth. Despair is not forever. Night prepares the eyes for the miracle of light. Closing of the chapter. This chapter of despair does not end in despair. It ends in stillness. The breath held before the first light touches the horizon. The moment before dawn is not defeat. It is transition. It is the waiting that makes dawn precious. And then the light arrives. The first rays when dawn breaks, it does not rush. It begins softly, a pale line on the horizon, a hush in the air, a bird's tentative song. So it was with the Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree. After Mara's night faded, silence deepened, and then clarity arose. He saw suffering, its cause, its end, and the path beyond. The truth shone like sunrise. The light had arrived. Enlightenment was not a roar, but a still radiance that spread across centuries. The end of war, May 1945. After years of devastation, Europe woke to silence, the guns quiet, the bombs stilled. People poured into the streets. Photographs captured strangers embracing, soldiers weeping, flags waving. The light of peace had arrived, costly and fragile, but real. Every war, like every night, ends. The dawn is always possible. Mandela's sunlight. Nelson Mandela stood on a stage in Pretoria, no longer prisoner, but president. Apartheid had ended. Children of all races danced in the streets. It was not a perfect dawn. Shadows of poverty and inequality lingered. Yet the light was undeniable. Hope had risen. The joy of small dawns. Not all dawns shake nations. Many arrive quietly in ordinary lives. A patient opens her eyes after surgery, and her family exhales relief. A student once drowning in failure holds his first passing grade. A child, after nights of tears, finally sleeps in peace. The light does not need to be grand to be real. Letters of Light. Helen Keller. once locked in silence and darkness, wrote, "Keep your face to the sunshine and you cannot see the shadows." Her dawn was education, touch, love, and communication. Her life proved that the arrival of light can be more than vision. It can be understanding, connection, joy. The Buddha's teaching on illumination, the Buddha said, "As the lamp dispels darkness, so wisdom dispels ignorance." The arrival of light is not just sunrise in the sky. It is sunrise in the mind, when confusion lifts, when truth replaces fear, when compassion overcomes anger. The rebuilding after storm cities destroyed by war rise again. Fields flooded by storms grow new crops. Homes lost to fire are rebuilt with stronger hands. Humanity's light is its resilience, the ability to begin again. No matter how dark the night, the scientists watching an apple fall glimpsed the law of gravity. Einstein, daydreaming about riding beams of light, imagined relativity. Curie, working in dark labs, uncovered the mysteries of radiation. Each discovery was a dawn, illumination, where once there had been only night. The inner light, the truest arrival of light, is within. The addict who awakens to healing, the grieving parent who learns to laugh again, the lonely heart who discovers love, friendship, or peace in solitude. Light always returns, if the heart waits with patience. Closing of the chapter, the night is real. Despair is real, but so too is light. Every dawn proves it. The darkness was never final. The arrival of light is the world's promise, whispered through history, echoed in every soul. And once the light comes, it does not only warm, it reveals, it invites, it awakens wonder. This leads us to the next chapter, the joy of discovery. The first breath of wonder when the sun rises after a long night. The world is not only safe again, it is astonishing. Trees shimmer with dew, rivers gleam, and every sound seems like music. So it is with the joy of discovery. It is not only knowledge gained, it is the awakening of awe. The Buddha spoke of this when he taught his first disciples. They listened, and suddenly, what was once confusion became clarity. Their faces lit with recognition. Discovery was joy. The discovery of fire long before cities and kingdoms, there was fire. Humanity, huddled in caves, struck stone against stone, and a spark leaped into flame. The discovery did not just warm their hands, it changed destiny. It brought cooking, protection, community. Around fire, stories began, and stories became civilization. The joy of discovery is never small. It ripples outward. Columbus and the New World Columbus sailed west, not knowing what he would find. The voyage was perilous. His men muttered of mutiny. But then land. Discovery has its shadows, of course, conquest, suffering, loss. Yet within it also lies the joy of opening horizons, of realizing the world is larger, richer, more mysterious than imagined. Every discovery brings both light and responsibility. The scientists, Joy Galileo, peered through his telescope and saw moons circling Jupiter. Newton glimpsed gravity in an apple's fall. Curie's experiments glowed in the dark with radioactivity. Their discoveries reshaped the map of human understanding, and each must have felt that jolt, the pulse of wonder when the unknown becomes known. Einstein called it the joy of comprehension. The joy of artistic discovery is not only science, it is music, painting, poetry. Beethoven, deaf, pressed his ear to the piano to hear vibrations. Out of silence, he discovered symphonies, Michelangelo, carving marble, said he was not creating figures but releasing them from stone. Rumi discovered divine love in poetry that still stirs hearts centuries later. Every brushstroke, every verse, is an arrival of light, a revelation of beauty that was waiting. The Buddha's joy in teaching. The Buddha discovered not only enlightenment for himself, but a path to share. His joy was not in possession, but in giving. He told his disciples, "I teach suffering, and the end of suffering." Each follower's awakening was his joy, like candles lit one after another, spreading endless light. The letters of discovery Marie Curie once wrote, "One never notices what has been done. One can only see what remains to be done." Discovery is joy not because it ends searching, but because it invites more searching. Every answer births more questions. Every dawn opens into a larger horizon. The child's discovery. A child takes her first step. A boy learns to read his first word. A young mind sees the stars and whispers, "What are they?" The joy of discovery is not reserved for the great. It lives in every small awakening. It is the soul's natural delight, the spiritual discovery beyond science and art. There is the discovery of self, to sit in silence and realize, I am more than my pain. To forgive after years of anger and feel the weight lift. To meditate and discover stillness beneath thought. These are discoveries that bring not only knowledge, but liberation. Closing of the chapter. The joy of discovery is life's promise. It is the heart's laughter when mystery becomes meaning. When darkness opens into wonder. History remembers the great discoveries, fire, gravity, freedom, enlightenment. But your life, too, is filled with them. Every new truth, every small insight, is a sunrise dot, and when many discoveries join together, they weave something even greater, unity, compassion, and shared humanity. That is the next dawn, the celebration of unity. The human circle. From the earliest fires to the grandest temples, humanity has always gathered in circles. Unity is the instinct to come together, to eat, to sing, to mourn, to rejoice. The Buddha's first community of monks was called the Sangha, not a solitary enlightenment, but a shared one. Unity multiplies light. The village feast. Picture a village at harvest. The fields, once bare, are full. Families bring grain, fruit, and bread to the center. They sit together, laughing, singing. This is unity, not only survival, but celebration. Food tastes better when shared. Joy deepens when multiplied. The nations gather after the devastation of 2 world wars. Nations met to form the United Nations. Imperfect, fragile, often flawed, yet the act itself was a celebration of unity. The attempt to prevent another global night. Every treaty, every alliance, every handshake across borders is humanity whispering, we belong together. The March for Civil Rights. Hundreds of thousands marched to Washington, not as scattered individuals, but as a united body. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke of a dream, and his voice was powerful because it rose from many voices joined together. Unity is not sameness. It is difference woven into harmony. Letters of Unity, John Donne wrote. No man is an island, entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Every joy, every grief, touches the whole. Unity is the recognition that the self is always part of something larger. The Buddha's teaching on togetherness. The Buddha said, as the rain falls equally on the just and unjust, so should compassion be offered to all. Compassion is the foundation of unity. It dissolves walls, bridges divides, and lets the heart see itself in others. The celebration in music when an orchestra plays, no instrument dominates. Strings, winds, percussion, each voice matters. Unity in diversity becomes beauty. So too in humanity, when cultures, traditions, and beliefs sing together. The world becomes symphonic, unity after disaster, when earthquakes strike. When floods rise, people rush not only to save their own, but to save strangers. In tragedy, unity reveals itself most powerfully. The celebration of unity is not only joy, it is resilience born. Together, the inner unity beyond nations and crowds. There is also inner unity, the harmony of mind, body, and spirit. To be whole within is to radiate wholeness without. The Buddha's calm presence was unity embodied, stillness that gathered others into peace. Closing of the chapter. Celebration of unity is the crown of discovery. It is humanity's true victory, not conquest, not wealth, but togetherness, from village feasts to global assemblies, from marches for justice to quiet compassion. Unity is the final measure of greatness, and yet even unity must one day face completion. The circle of life moves toward its close, not as an end, but as fulfillment. That leads us to the next chapter, the wisdom of completion. The circle of life, every dawn leads to dusk, every birth to death, every season completes its turning. The Buddha likened life to a flame, bright for a time, then fading into stillness. Yet the fading is not tragedy. It is a natural return. Completion is not destruction. It is fulfillment. The farmers harvest. A farmer plants in spring, tends in summer, gathers in autumn. By winter, the fields are bare. But the harvest is not loss, it is nourishment. The cycle is complete. So too with life. When lived with care, its ending is not emptiness, but fullness. Socrates' last lesson in Athens. Socrates drank the hemlock. His students wept. Yet he spoke calmly. The hour of departure has arrived, and we go our ways, I to die, and you to live. Which is better, God only knows. Socrates taught even in death that completion is not defeat. It is transition, the last lesson. The Buddha's parinirvanoan. The Buddha lay dying at Kushinagar. His disciples grieved. But he said, all compounded things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence. His passing was not an end, but the sealing of his teaching, the wisdom of impermanence. Letters of Completion. Leo Tolstoy, reflecting in old age, wrote, "Life is a dream. Death is the awakening." For him, completion was not collapse, but revelation. Wisdom often blooms at the threshold of departure. The artist's final work, Michelangelo, in his last sculptures, left them unfinished, rough marble with figures half immersed. To some, they seemed incomplete, yet their beauty lay in showing the process, not the perfection. Completion is not always polish. Sometimes, wisdom lies in leaving space. The joy of legacy completion is also legacy. Parents watching children grow beyond them, teachers seeing students surpass their knowledge, leaders planting seeds of change. They may never see bloomed, or completion is handing the torch forward, not holding it forever. The inner peace to complete one's journey with peace is the greatest wisdom. Regret binds the heart, acceptance frees it. The wise live so that when the final chapter closes, it does so gently. Like a book well-read. Closing of the chapter. Completion is not to be feared. It is the fullness of the circle, the harvest of life. From Socrates to the Buddha, from artists to farmers, wisdom teaches. Endings are beginnings, and death is part of life's wholeness. Yet even as we embrace completion, life reminds us of rhythm, that sorrow and joy return again. An eternal cycle that leads us to the next chapter. The emotional cycle returns. Section 17. The emotional cycle returns. Approximately 5,000 words. The eternal rhythm life is not a straight line. It is a circle, a tide, a heartbeat. Grief follows joy, and joy follows grief. Seasons turn, rivers flow, stars rise and set. To live is to move through cycles, endlessly falling, endlessly rising. The Buddha compared existence to a wheel, samsara, the turning of birth and death, sorrow and delight. Liberation lies not in denying the cycle, but in seeing it clearly. The return of spring every winter seems final. Trees stripped, earth hardened, skies grey. Yet spring always comes, blossoms bursting, rivers thawing, life beginning anew. So too in human hearts, despair hardens, grief chills, yet joy returns. Always, history's cycles, empires rise, flourish, fall. New nations rise in their place. Wars destroy, peace heals, and then conflict brews again. The French Revolution promised liberty, descended into terror, then gave way to empire, and later to democracy. The cycle turned, as it always does. History is not static. It breathes in cycles of failure and renewal. The letters of Weather, poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final." This is the wisdom of the cycle. No joy lasts forever, but neither does any pain. All returns, all flows. The Buddha's teaching on Balance the Buddha said, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. These are the 8 winds. The wise remains steady like a great tree. The cycle turns. But wisdom is balance, knowing both sorrow and joy will come again. And again, the child's laughter after tears. A child cries fiercely when a toy breaks. Moments later, she laughs at a butterfly. The cycle is swift in childhood, but it teaches the truth. Sorrow and joy are neighbors, never far apart. The artist's struggle and triumph. Van Gogh's despair drove him to darkness, yet his paintings radiate sunlight. Beethoven's deafness crushed him, yet his symphonies rose triumphant. In them we see the cycle return, sorrow birthing joy, struggle birthing beauty, nations in renewal. After the devastation of war, rose into technological brilliance. Germany from ashes became a hub of unity in Europe, nations to know the cycle, ruin followed by renewal, night followed by dawn, the inner cycle within each person. Joy and sorrow circle endlessly, love found, love lost, failure endured, success earned, illness suffered, health regained. The cycle is not punishment. It is life's music, teaching resilience, teaching gratitude. Closing of the chapter, the emotional cycle always returns. No grief is final, no joy eternal. All feelings rise and fall like waves. To live wisely is to ride the cycle, to celebrate joy without clinging, to endure sorrow without despair, and through it all, something remains unbroken, inspiration, the flame that passes through cycles without dimming. That leads us to the next chapter, the eternal flame of inspiration. The fire that never dies. Long ago, humanity discovered fire. Sparks turned to flame, flames to hearths, hearths to civilizations. The torch has passed endlessly, from cave to temple, from battlefield to sanctuary, from one hand to another. So too with inspiration. A thought, a word, a vision can outlive centuries. The flame burns on, even when the hand that lit it is gone. The Buddha's flame, the Buddha said, thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. His life ended, but his teaching continues, burning quietly in monasteries, in cities, in hearts across the world. The eternal flame of inspiration is not bound to time. Socrates and Plato. Socrates died in Athens, his body silenced. Yet Plato, inspired, carried his teacher's questions into philosophy. Aristotle followed, then centuries of thinkers, all warmed by the original spark. One man's questions lit a fire that still shapes how the world thinks. The flame of freedom. Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." The men who signed that paper are long gone, yet the flame they lit continues to inspire movements for liberty. From America to Africa to Asia, flames leap across borders, across centuries. Letters of inspiration. Dickinson, writing in solitude, left behind poems she never published. She wrote, "If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain." Her words, found after her death, have stopped countless hearts from breaking. The flame endured. The scientist's legacy. Newton declared, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." Science itself is an eternal flame, each generation lighting the next. Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, Einstein, a chain of sparks illuminating the cosmos. The music that lasts. Beethoven, deaf and despairing, wrote the Ninth Symphony. When performed, he could not hear the applause. Yet centuries later, his music still thunders in halls, still lifts souls. Art is fire that does not die. The inspiration of struggle. Nelson Mandela's courage lit a flame in South Africa. Gandhi's non-violence lit a flame in India. Martin Luther King Jr. carried Gandhi's spark to America. Struggles end, leaders die, but the eternal flame passes on, never extinguished. The inner flame. Each person carries such a flame. A teacher who inspires a child, a parent who nurtures kindness, a stranger who offers hope in despair. These sparks, though small, pass onward endlessly. Inspiration never ends with us. It multiplies. Closing of the chapter. The eternal flame of inspiration proves that death is not final. Though lives complete, ideas live, art sings, words echo, courage ripples. The torch is always carried forward. And yet, as flames leap into the future, we face uncertainty. The next chapter is suspense. The road ahead, still unwritten. Standing at the edge of tomorrow, every age has stood here at the threshold of the unknown. The Romans wondered if their empire would last forever. The medieval monks feared the year 1000 would bring the world's end. The industrial workers of the 19th century dreamed of utopia or collapse. And we too, wonder what lies ahead. The suspense of the future is a tension that binds all generations. The Buddha's silence. Once, a disciple asked the Buddha about the fate of the world, the beginning of time, and the end of existence. The Buddha remained silent, not out of ignorance, but because the questions were unanswerable, and the answers not useful. The suspense of the future is not to be solved, but to be lived. The fear of collapse. History has known collapse. Rome fell, dynasties crumbled, civilizations vanished. Could ours vanish too? Climate change, wars, divisions, and technologies raise fear. Suspense is not only curiosity, it is dread. The unknown can hold ruin. The hope of renewal, but suspense is not only fear, it is possibility. Every collapse has birthed renewal. After Rome's fall, Europe slowly After wars, peace has risen. After dark nights, dawn has broken. The suspense of the future is also the thrill of hope. Voices of prophets, Martin Luther King Jr., spoke of the future. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land. Prophets, poets, and visionaries do not erase suspense. They illuminate it with hope. The letters we leave, every generation writes a letter to the next, though not on paper. Our inventions, our mistakes, our wisdom, our ignorance, all are messages delivered forward. The suspense is in how they will read our letter. Science and the unknown. Space exploration. AI, medicine, the future of science stretches far beyond imagination. Will it save us or undo us? Suspense lingers in every discovery. Einstein once said, "The important thing is not to stop questioning." Suspense is the question that never ends. The suspense of personal futures. Not only humanity, but each soul lives in suspense. What will tomorrow bring? Health or illness? Love or loneliness? Gain or loss? Each morning we wake to suspense, stepping into an unwritten day. Literature of suspense. Great stories hold us in suspense. Homer's Odyssey, Shakespeare's plays, Dostoevsky's novels. But so too does life itself. The difference is, we cannot peek at the last page. Toward the future, the suspense of the future teaches humility. We do not know, we cannot control all. We can only prepare, hope, endure. Suspense is the thread that keeps humanity moving forward. Without mystery, life would be stagnant. Closing of the chapter, we stand together at the edge of tomorrow, hearts trembling. Fear and hope mix in suspense. The story continues, not yet written. But waiting beyond suspense lies resolution. Not an answer to every question, but a peace that endures. That peace is eternity's gift. The final turning, every story turns toward an ending. Empires conclude, lives complete, songs fade into silence. Yet endings are not absence, they are transformations. The final turn of life opens not into nothingness, but into eternity. The Buddha spoke of nirvana not as annihilation, but as liberation, freedom from the cycles of craving and sorrow. In eternity, happiness is not fleeting. It is serene, boundless, complete. The weight that falls away. Imagine a weary traveler, walking for decades under heavy burden. At last, they arrive at a place where the load can be set down. Relief, peace, rest. So too is eternity. The burdens of desire, pain, and uncertainty dissolve, leaving only clarity. Happiness of eternity is not ecstatic fire, but a gentle dawn that never ends. Philosophers on eternity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "All is ephemeral, both memory and the object of memory. Time is like a river, the events a rushing torrent. Only the present belongs to us. The rest is beyond." And yet, even the Stoic emperor believed in a deeper order, a cosmic reason. Eternity is not endless time, but timelessness. a realm where we touch the essence of being. Letters. Across time. When Rainer Maria Rilke wrote to a young poet, he said, "The future enters into us in order to transform itself in us. Long before it happens, eternity is this, the unseen currents of time already moving in us, shaping us, carrying us to an ocean vast and immeasurable. The joy of release. Religions speak differently. Heaven, paradise, nirvana, enlightenment, yet all point to the same truth. Happiness comes when longing ends. This eternal happiness is not in possessions, not in triumph, not in fleeting laughter. It is in the stillness of the soul that knows it has returned home." The story of a seed. A seed falls into the earth. It dies, in a sense, but in dying, it becomes a tree. Its death was not an end, but a passage. So too with life. Death appears final, yet eternity transforms it. Happiness of eternity is the flowering of what we could never imagine. The eternal flame revisited from section 18. The flame of inspiration burned beyond lives. But eternity is more than flame. It is the endless sky in which every flame shines without consuming. In eternity, no spark is lost. Every act of kindness, every word of wisdom, every note of music continues, woven into the fabric of timeless joy, fulfillment beyond struggle. Every struggle, sorrow, and suspense we traced across this journey now finds resolution. The despair that began in the first chapters is not erased, but transformed into meaning. The happiness of eternity is not naive joy. It is joy born from having endured. The silence that sings. Great mystics often describe eternity as silence, but in that silence there is music, a resonance beyond sound, like the pause at the end of a symphony. It holds more meaning than all the notes. The happiness of eternity is that music, unspoken, unending, unbroken, closing of the grand epic. And so we return. From sorrow to resilience, from suspense to peace, the story completes its circle. The happiness of eternity is the gift that all souls seek, knowingly or not. In the stillness of the eternal, there is no need to ask what next, for in eternity there is no next. There is only the fullness of being. The echo after the song. When music ends, silence follows. Yet in that silence, the song still echoes in the heart. So too, after eternity's revelation, the soul rests in stillness, not as emptiness, but as fullness beyond need. The happiness of eternity carries us to the return of stillness. It is like the calm sea after a storm, or the sky after thunder. The Buddha's quiet teaching. The Buddha often spoke in silence. His disciples once pressed him to explain the ultimate truth. He simply held up a lotus flower. Only one disciple smiled, understanding. Stillness is a teaching without words. The eternal cannot always be spoken. It must be felt. The philosophers pause. Plato wrote dialogues, endless questions, searching voices, but each ends in silence. The conclusion is not answers, but quiet. This is the wisdom of stillness. The greatest truths are too vast for speech. Stillness in history after war's end. There is stillness, fields empty of soldiers, streets quiet after parades. After revolutions, silence hangs over the cities. Humanity pauses to breathe. This stillness is not absence. It is healing. The letters never sent. Some of the most profound letters in history were never delivered. A diary entry, a private confession, a word left unsaid. In their stillness, they hold even more weight. Stillness preserves what speech cannot carry. The seed of renewal in stillness, seeds germinate. Forests regrow after fire. Souls recover after grief. Stillness is the soil of rebirth. The return of stillness is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of another circle, closing of the chapter eternities. Happiness does not leave us restless. It invites us back into stillness, where meaning can settle deep into the soul. The return of stillness is the breath after the song, the pause where the eternal rests within us. The pool of the past imagine standing at the edge of a still pond. When the surface is calm, it reflects perfectly. So too with memory. When the mind is quiet, it mirrors the past with clarity. But memory is not a mere photograph. It is alive. It reshapes, it reinterprets, it breathes. The Buddha on memory, the Buddha warned of attachment to memory, for clinging to the past combined us. Yet he also taught mindfulness, remembering rightly with wisdom. Can liberate. Memory is both chain and key. Memory in history, when a people lose memory, they lose themselves. Cultures keep memory alive through songs, stories, monuments, and rituals. The Holocaust memorials, the pyramids, the epic poems of Homer, all are mirrors of memory, ensuring that what was is never entirely gone. Letters preserved when soldiers wrote letters from the front lines. Many never returned. Their words remain fragments of memory, carrying voices across time. Reading them, we step into another soul's moment. These letters are mirrors that reflect love, fear, and hope. Memory and pain. Not all memory is sweet. Trauma lives in memory, too. Yet even painful memory carries meaning. The scars of history remind humanity not to repeat mistakes. The mirror of memory shows both beauty and wounds. The philosopher's reflection Nietzsche wrote, "The future influences the present just as much as the past." Memory is not backward-looking only. It shapes what we do now. What we recall, we carry forward. The eternal archive. Every act, every word, every kindness leaves its trace. Even when forgotten by people, perhaps they are remembered by eternity itself. The mirror of memory may be the closest humanity comes to immortality. Closing of the chapter. The return of stillness gave us peace. The mirror of memory gives us continuity. We see where we have come from, what we have endured, and what meaning remains. But reflection also awakens, longing, the desire to return, to relive, to rejoin what has passed. That longing leads us into the next step of the eternal journey. The ache of the soul. There is a homesickness deeper than place. Even those who have never left their homeland feel it. A sense that we are exiles, wandering far from where we truly belong. Philosophers, poets, and saints have all named it, the longing for return. The Buddha's parable, the Buddha told of a man pierced by an arrow. Instead of asking where the arrow came from, the man's first desire is to be healed. The arrow, he said, is suffering. The cure is awakening. And yet behind this parable lies another truth. Awakening is a return to wholeness, to our true nature. Odysseus and Homer. Homer's Odyssey. Odysseus longs for Ithaca. 10 years of war, 10 more years of wandering, yet always the pull of home. His journey is not just across seas, but across the soul's longing. Every life is its own odyssey, every soul searching for Ithaca. Letters of exiled poets have written letters drenched with longing. Dante in his banishment from Florence, Rumi in separation from Shams. The Jewish people in Babylonian captivity, exile sharpens the longing for return. The philosophers yearning Plotinus, the mystic philosopher, spoke of the soul's longing to return to the One. He wrote, "Let us fly to our dear country. There is the Father." But what is this flight? It is the soul's becoming like God. The longing for return is not just geographical, it is metaphysical. The weight of memory, when we recall childhood, we often feel the longing to go back. Not because we want to be children again, but because we long for the innocence, the simplicity, the unbrokenness of those days. Memory becomes a doorway through which the soul looks backward. The return beyond death religions speak of the soul's final return, the return to God, to heaven, to the eternal homeland. For some, this is the deepest hope, that life is not an endless wandering, but a pilgrimage that ends in reunion. The longing for return gives life direction. Closing of the chapter, we long for return, not because the present is empty, but because the soul knows it was made for more. Home is not only behind us, it is ahead, waiting. This longing leads us to the next chapter, renewal. For every return is also a beginning again. The dawn after darkness, every night ends in morning. However long the darkness, however heavy the silence, the sun rises. Renewal is not denial of suffering. It is the proof that suffering is not final. The renewal of the soul is the dawn that follows the storm. The Buddha on renewal. Buddha taught that every breath is new. To inhale is to receive life again. To exhale is to let go. In each breath lies rebirth. He showed that renewal is not far away, it is here. In each mindful moment, renewal. In history after wars, nations rebuild. After plagues, societies reform. After collapse, cultures rise again. Humanity itself is a story of renewal. The Renaissance was born from the ruins of the Middle Ages, proving that even the darkest centuries cannot hold back light forever. Letters of renewal. Professors have written letters of resilience. Martin Luther King Jr. from Birmingham jail, Mandela from Robben Island. Their words did not lament only, they dreamed of renewal. Their souls were not crushed by chains, but strengthened by them. Renewal through forgiveness. To forgive is to renew. It frees the soul from the chains of bitterness, allowing love to bloom again. Without forgiveness, there is no true renewal. The soul is born anew when it chooses mercy. Nature's lesson forests burn, yet from ash green shoots rise. Rivers flood, then nourish new valleys. Nature teaches that death is never the end. It is the condition for renewal. So too with us. Renewal and the soul's journey. Every tradition speaks of renewal. In Christianity, resurrection; in Hinduism, reincarnation; in Buddhism, rebirth of mind; in Stoicism, the daily practice of beginning again. The renewal of the soul is humanity's deepest hope. Closing of the chapter. Longing for return finds its answer in renewal. We cannot go back unchanged, but we can begin again, transformed. Renewal gives us courage for the journey yet unfinished. And so, after renewal, the soul awakens to love. Love not as fleeting passion, but as eternal embrace. The heart's final home. Every longing, every journey, every renewal ultimately leads to love. For what is home if not love? What is peace if not being held in love? The embrace of eternal love is the soul's final resting place, the circle complete. The ache soothed the Buddha. On compassion, the Buddha spoke often of metta loving kindness. He taught, radiate boundless love towards the entire world above, below, and across, without obstruction, without hatred, without enmity. This is eternal love, not limited to family or nation, but extending to all beings, everywhere. Philosophers on love Plato described love as a ladder, beginning with desire for beauty in one body, then ascending to love of all beauty, and finally reaching the love of beauty itself. Love begins with the particular, but its embrace expands to the universal. Eternal love in history letters, between lovers, parents, and children. Friends in exile, all testify that love survives distance and time. Think of soldiers writing home, their love outlasting battlefields, or Gandhi's love for humanity, which moved millions without violence. Love is eternal because it does not die with the body. It multiplies across generations. That embrace that heals love is also healing. Where bitterness festers, love forgives. Where despair paralyzes, love moves. Where loneliness isolates, love embraces. The eternal embrace of love does not deny suffering, it redeems it. The cosmic embrace mystics describe God as love itself. Rumi wrote, "Love is the bridge between you and everything." Love is not only emotion, but reality, the very fabric of the cosmos, drawing all things into unity. The personal experience every soul knows eternal love, in glimpses, the smile of a mother, the loyalty of a friend, the sacrifice of a stranger. These glimpses hint at something greater, a love that never ends. Closing of the chapter Eternal Love is the embrace in which all other themes dissolve. Sorrow, longing, renewal, suspense. It is the final answer to the soul's questions. Yet even love unfolds further. From the embrace of eternal love comes the unity of all humanity and creation as one whole. The great web of life, every river runs to the ocean. Every star shines into the same night sky. Every breath we take is shared. The air we inhale once passed through countless lungs before us. We are not separate islands. We are threads in a single web, woven tightly into the unity of all beings. The Buddha on interconnection. The Buddha taught pratitya samutpa, dependent origination. Nothing exists alone. Everything arises in relation to everything else. To harm another is to harm oneself. To love another is to love oneself. Unity is not an idea, it is reality itself. Philosophers of oneness, Stoics, called it the cosmopolis, a universal city where all humans are citizens. The Upanishads declared, "You are that, the self and the cosmos are one." Mystics across traditions glimpsed the same vision. No division, only unity. Unity in history. Moments of great unity shine in history. The fall of the Berlin Wall, where strangers embraced as one people. The global response to disasters, where nations forgot borders to aid each other. The collective dream of peace, voiced in Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Unity is not rare. It waits to be recognized. The letters of unity, when John Lennon wrote, "Imagine all the people living life in peace," it was not just a song, it was a letter to humanity, urging us to awaken to unity. Every visionary's words are such letters, messages, reminding us that separation is an illusion. The unity of nature. Trees breathe out what we breathe in. Bees pollinate the food we eat. The rain that falls in one land nourishes crops in another. Nature has always known unity. Humanity, in forgetting, suffers. Unity beyond death. In death, unity remains. Our bodies return to earth, becoming soil, air, water, feeding future life. The cycle continues, unbroken. We never truly leave the unity of all beings. Closing of the chapter. The embrace of eternal love naturally leads to unity. The realization that all beings are one. When we awaken to this truth, conflict softens, fear dissolves, compassion becomes natural, yet unity is not static. Like rivers merging, it flows forward into something greater, the cosmic rhythm itself. The pulse of existence, everything moves with rhythm. The tides rise and fall. The moon waxes and wanes. The heart beats, the lungs breathe. The stars burn and fade. This rhythm is the heartbeat of the cosmos, an endless dance where every being takes part. The Buddha on impermanence. The Buddha taught anicca, impermanence. Nothing stays still. All flows, all changes. Yet this impermanence is not chaos. It is rhythm, a patterned flow in which life unfolds. Like waves, joy and sorrow rise and fall. To fight the rhythm is to drown. To flow with it is to find peace. Philosophers of harmony, Pythagoras, believed the cosmos itself was music, the harmony of the spheres. Every planet, every star, every atom vibrates with sound we cannot hear, yet our souls can feel. Heraclitus declared, "You cannot step into the same river twice. The river flows because rhythm never stops. Rhythm in history and nations. To rise and fall in rhythm. Golden ages, declines, renewals. The Renaissance followed the Middle Ages. Peace followed wars. Humanity breathes in cycles, like one vast organism. The rhythm of the cosmos is echoed in history's unfolding. Letters in rhythm, poets have always captured rhythm. Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass sang in cadence with life's pulse. I am large. I contain multitudes. Their words ride the rhythm of language, carrying the cosmic beat into human hearts. The rhythm of the soul or moods, too, follow rhythm. Darkness and light, despair and hope, silence and song. No one is ever only one thing. The soul lives in a dance of opposites, made beautiful by rhythm. Unity in rhythm when we dance, when we sing together. When our footsteps align, we glimpse the unity of rhythm. A crowd chanting in unison. A choir singing in harmony. These are microcosms of the great cosmic rhythm. Closing of the chapter. The cosmos does not simply exist. It moves, it beats, it sings. To live well is not to escape the rhythm, but to join the dance. From rhythm flows harmony, a deeper order that reveals itself when we surrender to the cosmic song. From rhythm to harmony, rhythm is the beat. Harmony is the blending. In the cosmos, stars burn in their orbits, planets spin, atoms vibrate, but all together they form a vast symphony. Harmony is not sameness. It is diversity woven into unity. Many notes, one song. The Buddha on balance. The Buddha's teaching of the middle way is harmony in practice. Neither indulgence nor denial, neither clinging nor aversion, but balance. The path between extremes. Harmony is found not in excess, but in balance. Philosophers of harmony, Confucius, spoke of harmony as the highest social good. A society thrives when differences blend instead of clash. The Stoics found harmony in aligning the soul with nature, saying, "Live according to nature, and you will find peace." Harmony in history, moments of harmony stand as shining examples. The dialogues of ancient Greece, where philosophers debated not to destroy but to discover truth. Together. The cooperation of scientists across nations to explore space. Humanity working as one voice to reach the stars. The peacemakers who, after wars, sought reconciliation instead of revenge. Harmony has always been humanity's highest achievement. The documents of harmony, the Charter of the United Nations, signed after the devastation of World War II, was an attempt to create harmony among nations. Though imperfect, it carried the aspiration to practice tolerance and live together in peace with one another as good neighbors. Every document of peace is a testament to humanity's longing for harmony. Harmony in nature. Listen to a forest. Birds sing in layers, insects hum beneath, rivers murmur through, leaves rustle above. Each sound, by itself, is simple. Together, they create harmony. Nature never struggles for harmony. It simply is. Humanity, too, can return to this natural balance, the harmony of the soul within us. Harmony is peace between thoughts and feelings, between action and conscience. A harmonious life is not free of conflict, but it is a life where inner voices sing together instead of tearing apart. Closing of the chapter. Existence is not just rhythm, it is harmony. Many lives, one symphony. Many stories, one song. And yet, even harmony is not the end. Beyond it lies transcendence, a state where life's music carries us beyond time itself. Beyond the self. To transcend is to go beyond. Beyond fear, beyond ego, beyond the narrow walls of the self. The Buddha spoke of nirvana, the extinguishing of craving, the release from suffering, the awakening into boundless peace. This is transcendence, not escape from life, but a flowering beyond it. Philosophers of transcendence. Plato imagined the world of forms, a realm beyond appearances, where truth is eternal. Plotinus spoke of the one, where the soul rises beyond the material world to unite with ultimate reality. Kant described the transcendental, the conditions that lie beyond perception yet make experience possible. Each pointed, in their own way, to life's beyond. Transcendence in history. Great leaders often lived transcendence. Gandhi, who transcended violence with Nelson Mandela, who transcended hatred with forgiveness. Their lives showed that transcendence is not withdrawal from the world, but transformation of it. The letters of transcendence. Mystics across traditions left behind writings of transcendence. Rumi's poetry, where the self dissolves into divine love. St. Teresa of Avila's visions, where the soul unites with God. The Zen masters' koans, designed to break the mind and reveal the beyond. These letters, these poems, are roadmaps to transcendence. The transcendence of nature. Look at a mountain. Stand before an ocean. Gaze into a star-filled sky. Something in us rises, stretches, expands. We feel small, yet also infinite. Nature has always been humanity's doorway into transcendence. The transcendence of the soul when we forgive when it seems impossible. When we love without expecting return. When we give without seeking reward, we transcend. These are not grand gestures, but everyday transcend. NCES. Closing of the chapter. Life, when lived in harmony, naturally transcends. We awaken to the beyond, to peace, to love, to eternity. And yet even transcendence is not the end. For beyond transcendence lies the eternal return, the happiness of eternity, where all cycles, all songs, all stories continue forever. Eternity as fulfillment. Eternity is not tomorrow. It is not an endless future. It is the present fully embraced, so complete that time no longer matters. The Buddha called it the deathless state. In Christian mysticism, it is eternal life in God. In Sufi poetry, it is union with the beloved. Different names, one reality, joy without end. Philosophers on eternity. Spinoza wrote, "The human mind cannot be absolutely destroyed with the body, but something of it remains which is eternal." Nietzsche, with his vision of the eternal return, asked us to live as if every moment would repeat forever, so that life itself becomes eternity. Eternity is not apart from life. It is the deep essence of life. Eternity in history. Eternity shines through moments when humanity touches the timeless. When the first astronauts looked back at Earth and saw not nations, but one fragile blue home. When lovers, across centuries, wrote letters that still move hearts today. When a song, a poem, a prayer survives generations, still carrying truth. Eternity does not belong to the future. It belongs to what endures. The documents of eternity, sacred texts, speeches, and letters, they are eternity inscribed in words. The Bhagavad, whispering eternal wisdom on the battlefield. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, binding sacrifice to timeless ideals. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, affirming dignity for all people, for all time, in every age. Humans have sought to give their highest truths to eternity. Nature's eternity. Stars we see tonight began shining long before we were born. Their light may outlast us, carrying messages across cosmic distances. A tree's roots dig deep into time, its rings recording centuries. Nature whispers eternity in every grain of sand, every ocean wave, every night sky. The soul's eternity, what is eternal in us? Not wealth, not fame, not even the body. It is love, compassion, wisdom, kindness. These ripple outward forever, touching lives we may never see. A single act of kindness may live on for generations. A spark of eternity, the happiness of eternity. This is the final gift. A happiness not bound by circumstance, not dependent on success or failure, not threatened by death. It is the happiness of eternity, to live fully, love deeply, and know that nothing true is ever lost. Closing of the epic. We began in sorrow and despair. We walked through suffering, resilience, courage, and love. We discovered unity, rhythm, harmony, transcendence, and now, at the end, we arrive at eternity. The story does not close, it opens into infinity. For the happiness of eternity is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of forever.